again, everybody. It's Laurie White with the Greater Providence Chamber of Commerce, your host here for Chamber TV, and this is episode number 145. And today, very excited to be talking about all things manufacturing, and we have a very special guest with us today. So, hi, Kathie Mahoney. How are
Hi,
you?
Laurie. I'm great. How are you? Thank you for having me.
Fantastic. I've been looking forward to this all week. So you are the Center Director of Polaris MEP, which stands for Manufacturing Extension Partnership. So tell us a little bit about the partnership.
So Polaris MEP is one of 51 MEP centers across the country. We are part of the Hollings MEP program, which is funded through the Department of Commerce and under the NIST MEP and the NIST system in the Department of Commerce. We are an organization, a nonprofit organization that helps manufacturers grow and be competitive in Rhode Island. And we work primarily with manufacturers and within the state of Rhode Island.
Fantastic. So you have a very important job, a very important role. Manufacturing has long been the essential backbone of the Rhode Island economy. The American Industrial Revolution was founded in Providence, so manufacturing is in our DNA in every respect. So tell me a little bit about how you came to this role and what you see as some of the immediate challenges that you think need to be addressed.
So manufacturing is vital to all industries across the country, and particularly in Rhode Island. Rhode Island is very unique in the sense of we are a melting pot of all manufacturing industries within the state. The data will show that there is not one predominant industry in Rhode Island, which makes it a very unique place to do business because your supply chain can be very local. I came to work for Polaris MEP just over a year ago from the Mass MEP. My family and I relocated to Rhode Island a few months ago, and this opportunity came up just about a year ago. So we decided to make the jump to move to this beautiful state and be closer to the ocean.
So what is it that's in your soul, in your essence, that drew you to want to be the premier advocate for manufacturing? Tell me a little bit about your passion for this work.
So I stumbled upon it working for manufacturing. I have a marketing and business background, and I was looking to change jobs. And then the opportunity became available to work for the Mass MEP. Didn't know a lot about manufacturing, learned about it as I was growing within the industry. The thing that I love about this position is the impact that we can have. And you see it every day, whether you're in the grocery store. I was at Dave's Market yesterday and walking down the pasta aisle, I saw 3 or 4 companies that Polaris works with. I love going into the companies and talking to them after the project managers have completed their work. They do the hard work. I get to come in and listen to all the success and see the impact that we can have both on people and on the companies, which then in turn builds a stronger ecosystem for manufacturing within the state.
Before we get into the particulars of how you help manufacturers and how anyone who is listening today can tap into your vital services, I'm curious, you mentioned your prior work with Massachusetts MEP. Do you see any stark differences between the industrial base in Massachusetts versus Rhode Island?
Not within the industrial base, yes. Massachusetts has pockets. So like in Western Mass, it's primarily machine shops. In the Northeast, it's larger tech companies. On the South Coast, it's textiles companies. Whereas Rhode Island is, I like to compare it to the western part, Western Mass. If you look at west of Springfield, they're smaller companies. They tend to work very well together. They know each other. They have a pig roast each year. Rhode Island is very similar to that. The companies here work very well together. They know each other, whether you're in the same industry or not. If you have a supplier right down the street, you can call up and be like, I am looking for this. Oh, I know so-and-so. I'll make an introduction for you. It's a very collaborative community within manufacturing, and also the number of resources that are available to all businesses in Rhode Island is just tremendous. In Massachusetts, there's a lot more layers between the services and the government. Here, you can have, lunch with the governor. It's a very connected, well-respected business community.
So let's jump right into the exact services Polaris MEP provides. So could you paint a use case, if you will, for us about how you've helped one of your major clients and how it's changed their own trajectory as a manufacturer?
Sure. So we work directly with the companies. We go in and we do an analysis. We do a self-assessment with them. We do some observation time. And then we meet with the owners and we go through what they're looking for, where we think we could make the greatest impact. And then from there, we will do projects and we'll talk to them and work directly with the employees of the company. And from there, each project is surveyed 6 months to a year once it's completed. Now, our core services are on the shop floor, where it's, process improvement, continuous improvement, whether it be lean training, Kaizen, 5S, and also ISO to ensure a quality product is produced within the facility. But we are growing, and we do have a resource of about 50 third-party providers that we work with, that it's their niche market, where it may not be a huge demand with every client for us, but there is demand within the manufacturing industry. For example, marketing, website design, those industries are very tech specific. So we hire outside third parties to work directly with the companies for those pieces. Some impacts that we've had, we've done plant layouts that have saved companies from either having to buy a facility, or proper production has increased because of where the equipment that we've worked with them is now laid out. If you think of, like when you buy a house, if you upscale to a house, you come from an apartment and you have, like one couch, one chair, and you slowly add pieces to the house as time goes on. A manufacturing facility is very similar. So you have the square foot of a plant layout of a plant, and then as production increases, your products may increase. You put the equipment where you need it. But once you get all the space filled out, it may not be the best layout for the most efficient, productive use of the equipment and your staff's time. So we kind of come in, we do an assessment, we measure the steps that people are taking, the time that it's taking, where everything is. For example, if it's, is the first step near where the material comes in, is the last step near the shipping department. And then we make sure that everything flows. And as a result, the production time can increase and the amount of time that the product is flowing in the shop floor can decrease, which makes the company more efficient.
That's really interesting. And I'm sure you've worked with our good friend Carl Wadenston from Vibeco, and he is Mr. Lean. He is such a disciple of lean manufacturing, and you mentioned Kaizen and ISO. So unpack some of these concepts, if you will, Kathie, because they're so important. And I love the analogy around the house and the furniture, and how you're bolting on new furniture, and just after a while it's so random, you say to yourself, why is that over there? But why does that matter in terms of the manufacturing layout, and what's at stake here? Obviously time, obviously money, but talk a little bit about how some of these changes have really impacted the bottom line for some of your clients.
So the the companies can, if you think about it in the sense of the shop floor piece of it, so you have each product that you develop costs a certain amount of money to produce. You know, the time that is spent on the shop floor, not only in the materials that you have invested into the product, but also the amount of time that it takes for it to get from the materials to the finished product out the door. If you think of the sense of a spaghetti diagram, so like you have, let me use an example. One of the clients that we worked with in Massachusetts, we couldn't figure out why it was taking so long for this one step in the process. And come to find out, the person didn't have all of the tools right there in what we refer to as cell. Each piece of the production floor is referred to as a cell. He didn't have each tool that he needed in that cell. So he was spending time going back and forth looking for the tool, what he needed. And that is a waste of time. So Lean teaches you the 8 wastes of a production flow. And so as a result, you become more efficient and you work through those steps on the production floor to get the best product out the fastest that you can. And then your time on the production floor is reduced, which then means your time for hours worked will then increase your production time.
This must be very satisfying work for you, because you go in and you do this analysis and you make these recommendations. And just like any of us that are tied to our own ways or our old ways, we say, wow, I never thought of that. That must be really valuable, and just make your day in terms of what you can do, what seemingly little small tweaks could do to magnify and amplify a bottom line. So I think what you're saying is the message is nothing is seemingly too insignificant when it comes to manufacturing flow in the cells.
Well, and it's also the communication within the shop floor. So for instance, engineering could produce a part and not understand that manufacturing needs, additional equipment to produce this part. And as long as the communication is there, then the two departments can work better together, and thus producing, again, a better product, a better quality product out the door.
Kathie, I'm curious, are you seeing any significant differences in the type of products that are being manufactured among your clients in Rhode Island today?
So some companies have pivoted because of the pandemic. We just released a survey that will result in a study that will be published early in 22. And it's fantastic that about 50% of the respondents to date, now it just went out Wednesday, so it's only been out a couple of days, are seeing a very positive bottom line for their manufacturing facility and their production company over the next calendar year, which I think is fantastic, given everything that is going on in the country related to supply chain and worker shortage. But as far as products go, primarily it's the standard products here in Rhode Island. Jewelry is a strong industry. Textiles is a strong industry. Metals, machining are all strong. But like I had said earlier, we're a melting pot for all industries, running the gamut from computers to tech to, textiles and old world foundries.
Mm-hmm. Sure. I understand that completely. And what we like to talk about, and I'm sure some folks may not totally appreciate the importance of manufacturing to a local economy, to a state's economy, in that it provides value added. So can you talk a little bit about what you see as the real importance to manufacturing and why it's such an industry that needs to be nurtured?
So there's economic impact, economic data that demonstrates that for each manufacturing dollar generated within a state, it generates an additional $3.85 through indirect impact within the state. For example, wages. If you work in a manufacturing facility, you get a paycheck, and then with that, you go out to eat with your family, or you shop at the local store, which is why it's so important to shop local. Then it generates additional funds for the state, and there's also a direct impact related to the taxes within the state. Manufacturing is the third highest industry in the state for jobs within that industry. So the economic impact is there. There's about 1,400 jobs in Rhode Island. 1,400 manufacturing companies in Rhode Island.
Yeah, that's really interesting. So the creation of a distinct product is what generates the economic impact, the cascading down the supply chain, if you will, because it's not just trading on existing goods and services. What you're doing is you're actually creating something new and putting something new into the supply chain.
Correct.
So we are going to take a break for just 30 seconds. We will be right back. We are talking with Kathie Mahoney, who is the Center Director for Polaris Manufacturing Partnership. And we will be back in just a second after a word from our friends at Bank Newport.
Want a convenient alternative to banking in branch? Try our personal teller machine. Simply drive up to a PTM and tap the Teller Assist button. You'll be connected through secure video to a banker at our customer service center. Our banker can help you make payments, cash checks, make deposits, or get cash in multiple denominations. Our PTM also offers extended hours to fit your schedule and 24/7 ATM services, making it easier for you to bank. We're all in, Rhode Island.
Well, that spot by Bank Newport talks about innovation in financial services, and you're all about innovation in manufacturing. So we're talking to Kathie Mahoney from Polaris. I want to ask you, Kathie, to tell us a little bit more about how you can help manufacturers, and let's talk about the cost involved. So somebody's listening to this and they're wondering, hey, maybe I could benefit from this. What do I have to do to qualify? Do I have to be a certain size? Do I have to have been in business for a certain threshold of time? Do I have to have a certain amount of employees and sales? Tell us the back end of how you work with manufacturers and exactly what's involved, particularly the cost.
Sure. So there is a fee for service, but it will depend on the project that's between the project manager and the company, how they decide to move forward. There are some grants that will help offset some of the costs, but we work with the company to demonstrate what exactly they'll receive and what the cost of those services are. So the company has the opportunity to say, no, we'd like to do this, or we'd like to do that. And how that happens is we go in and we meet with the company, so they can reach out to us, contact me, contact our office. We'll assign a project manager to them, and then they go in and meet with the company and have a conversation, listen to what exactly their objectives are of the company, and then we together will create a proposal and a needs analysis based on the conversation and the observation time that the project manager spent with the company. There is no fee for that time. It's not until we begin the project work. And once that is agreed upon with the company and the project manager, then the timeline and the schedule will be set. We work with manufacturing companies, and we work with any size, any number of employees. You don't have to have been in business for a long time. We just want to help manufacturing companies grow in Rhode Island. And as such, we have entered into a partnership recently with RIHub, who works with startup companies in the state. And we have hired a consultant to help us and RIHub work with startup companies within the state. So as long as they have a manufacturing NAICS code, we will work with them, and we will even work with them to get that code, which is something that's done through D&B. And then we kind of go from there. And then the projects can last anywhere from a one type of training, you know, if we hire someone to do marketing, or if we go in and do a plant analysis, or it can be 6 months, depending on the time frame that the company has available. And we work with their schedules to make sure that we're not impacting their business, because that's the primary responsibility of the company. And we want to make sure that we don't impact their business. The other thing that we're seeing a lot of is, especially with all of the retirements that are happening, is the workforce there's a need for skilled workforce within manufacturing. And as such, companies have started to hire us to do a program that's called job instruction. And what that is putting onto paper the detailed steps that are involved in every piece of the production of a part for their company. Because if you think about it, there's so much that we do that is we just do automatically. So if you're training someone, you're saying, okay, this is how you set the machine. These are the calibrations. These are the materials that you use. But the machine, you know, a person's been working on the machine for 5 or 10 years. So when the machine makes this sound, they know, oh, I just have to adjust it that way. Well, someone new coming into the position isn't going to know that that's what it is. So we work with the current employee to make sure that all of the steps that they do are then in line for any new employees coming in, which is a huge benefit to the company, because you know, after the pandemic, the people are retiring or not coming back after COVID. So they now have these instructions on how to ensure that they get the same quality product that they've been getting over the last 5 or 10 years.
That's amazing. That is phenomenally valuable, because we talk about how, particularly in manufacturing, where we've had generations, even, you know, multiple generations of families working in a particular company, in a particular industry. And then for whatever reason, they retire, they get sick, they move on, they want to do something else. All this valuable knowledge walks out the door with them. So what you're describing is an opportunity to capture all that while they're still there, while they're still motivated, while they're still, you know, really primed to be able to explain, you know, step by step, you know, what's at stake when, as you point out, when the machine starts making a certain noise.
Yeah. And it adds, it reinforces the value of the employees too, because, you know, as a president or an owner or a general manager of a company, you know how to run the whole division, but they know the day-to-day pieces of it. And it empowers the employees too, because it also lets them make changes and have a voice in how their position is being run and the equipment that they're on too.
Are you seeing that most of your manufacturers are selling direct to their customers, or are they working with a manufacturer's rep as an intermediary?
That's a good question. I know that we work with companies that are looking for new markets and new products. I think the larger companies have reps, but I believe that the majority are selling directly to their customers. I haven't heard of a lot of reps in Rhode Island, but that's a really good question.
Do you work with companies that are associated with or ancillary to the manufacturing process, like wholesale distribution or any other support entities to manufacturing in particular?
Not necessarily distribution centers. We work with organizations that are supportive of manufacturing. For instance, RIHUB, we work very closely with RIMA and making sure that the services and working towards empowering and improving manufacturing in Rhode Island. We work very closely with the Department of Commerce if someone is looking to come to Rhode Island, or if we hear of someone looking for the grant programs that the Department of Commerce offers. We also work very closely with RIMTA, 401 Tech Bridge, regarding the technology pieces of it, Wrighton in the textile industry. So we work with those support services because we recognize that we can't do it all and we shouldn't be doing it all, especially when there's other experts in the state that can do it much better than we can.
You mentioned, RIMA and RIHUB. So RIMA is the Rhode Island Manufacturers Association. RIHUB is a relatively new organization, as you point out, that's working with startups. So again, we always get into this alphabet soup of organizations, but I think what you're trying to paint a picture of is that there are a lot of resources in the community that companies can tap into, and it's all a matter of being able to be able to work with one organization who then can do the handoff and say, okay, well, we can do this particular set of services for you, but with this, I would recommend that you develop a connection or a new partnership and be able to thread all those together. And that's incredibly valuable. And as you mentioned, it's something that happens much more readily here in Rhode Island because of our size, because of our connectivity, because we all know each other. That's the sort of the Rhode Island way. So what would you suggest to our listeners about how to sort of take the first step in terms of beginning a process that would lead to a variety of help organizations being able to move a company from A to Z?
So the first step is just to reach out to us and have a conversation. As I had said earlier, there's no fee for someone visiting your facility and seeing them. I'm fairly new to the position, so I've been working with getting out and visiting Rhode Island companies and getting to know the landscape better, and also getting to know the partners better. Laurie, you said that there's a breadth of services here in Rhode Island that is just phenomenal and so supportive of manufacturing in all industries, business industries in the state. It's just such a great resource to build that strong ecosystem that can support manufacturing. And as such, we've been reaching out to the different organizations and making sure that they're aware of the new things that Polaris are doing. So we also learning what they're doing because so much has changed since the pandemic. What businesses were doing prior to March of 20 could be a little bit different now, especially related to the grant funding or the federal funding that's becoming available. So there's all kinds of resources available to companies to help support them, to help them grow. And so all they have to do, the first step is just to reach out and ask and say, here I am, I'd like some help.
Yeah. I know you make it very easy for your clients to be able to engage and to sort of demystify the process. I want to get to another topic that you mentioned earlier and circle back. The survey that you just conducted came out this week. Very interesting findings. There's a lot to dig into there. Everything from examples of how companies have pivoted as a result of COVID to go into other industries. So give us the highlights of your survey findings.
So as you said, it just came out on Wednesday. So it's only been out a couple of days. So far, we have seen that over 50% of the companies that have replied are seeing a positive outlook for manufacturing. And they are both for their bottom line and for the future of manufacturing in Rhode Island, which I think is tremendous. No surprise, the top three concerns are workforce, supply chain, and new markets and products. So we're working on that and services related to that. And then the other one that was a happy surprise for me was that over 50% of the companies that have responded already are either researching or starting to look at how they can bring technology into their company. Automation can help a lot of companies with the lack of a skilled workforce, because then they can bring in, if they have basically a pick and place concept within their production line that is, a lower entry level position, but they have people that they can upskill and bring into the manufacturing higher level of the production process with additional skills, which means additional pay for those employees. So you can think about bringing in a cobot or some kind of technology into that entry level, into the beginning piece of the process within the production. So I think that that's great. And it's something that Polaris is looking at for 2022 is being able to offer. We have someone on staff currently who has experience in going into a facility and talking to them about where they may put a cobot. I don't want to give the impression that it's going to eliminate jobs, but it can certainly replace a job that they can't fill. So if it's kind of like when lean came out, because of the basic word lean, employees thought that they were going to lose their job. I think automation is getting the same bad rap, but it can actually increase your productivity. There's been all kinds of studies that have been done that can increase the productivity on the shop floor with the same number of people. You know, manufacturing and continuous improvement is all about doing everything faster, better, more efficient with the same number of people, or even increasing people. The manufacturing companies are looking to hire. They're just looking for those positions. And as such, Polaris works to train people that are currently not employed in manufacturing, and we work very closely with DLT. I like to say that we help manufacturing companies with their top line, their bottom line, and their pipeline, so that we're building that future generations going into manufacturing.
Oh, that's interesting. I didn't realize that you also were involved in the pipeline portion of the program. Very aware of the work that you're doing on the shop floor and working with the manufacturing colleagues in terms of systems improvement. But the idea of going into a manufacturing job these days, you hear a lot of manufacturers say, you know, we are underappreciated as an industry because, you know, back in the day, manufacturing was considered, you know, quote unquote, you know, dirty work. But today, of course, that is definitely not the case, and it's a matter of perception, right? Changing the perception and working to educate parents of kids that might be in school that there are a wealth of opportunities, high value end opportunities for people, for young people to go into manufacturing and to have a really satisfying career with lots of promotional opportunities and development along the way, and be able to dabble in a lot of really interesting things that are very technology driven, right? So the idea of you know, something that's, you know, suboptimal that, you know, we may have associated with manufacturing back in the 40s, the 30s, whatever, those days are obviously long gone. And these are very sophisticated, high-end jobs that pay well.
So the pipeline piece is new. So we've started over the last year working with some of the high schools, and we actually just got a grant to get 5 VR goggles. We did a demonstration last week, and it was great. So the goggles have on them curriculum already for basic entry level, you know, kind of testing skills. You know, what tools to use, what is a, you know, a hammer, a wrench, why shouldn't you use this one? And when you're using the goggles, you're actually like picking it up, you're holding it, and it's all virtual. And so we're rolling these out in the schools to kind of show the technology that is available and how you can train in manufacturing. And to your point, to kind of change the perception of manufacturing within the schools. There's all kinds of data that by the time someone's a freshman or a sophomore in high school, they may not know what they want to do, but they know what they don't want to do. So it's before they get to that point, changing that whole perception of manufacturing and making sure that they're aware it's a viable career that can definitely provide you with a livable wage and potential for career growth.
You mentioned there were 3 aspects that grew out of the survey. So workforce, supply chain, and new markets. So we've covered workforce. Let's transition over to what's happening with the supply chain. one doesn't need to look far to see and read about various reports of supply chain clogs and, concerns about what's going to happen, coming towards the holidays, and, just all of the ships that are backlogged, and the tremendous post-COVID supply chain morass. So what do you see relative to the easing of the supply chain clogging?
So we are, as I mentioned in the very beginning, we are part of the national MEP National Network, and they are working, we work very closely with them on finding materials and other companies that could offer the services that our Rhode Island companies are looking for. So for instance, if they needed a material to build, there was a request recently for Amtrak was looking for a new company to make their uniforms. So we sent that out to the companies that we knew of. We're making those connections because as part of the national network. Obviously, we look locally first for any kind of connections that we may have, and then we spread it out New England and then across the country. In the supply chain issue, I mean, we hear it all over the place. It's everywhere. Is not going to be elevated or relieved within the next 6 months. I think it's going to be a little bit longer than that. And as a result, I think manufacturing domestically is going to raise even higher awareness because of the pandemic. So I think that this is a great time for manufacturing. We've seen it all with the federal funding that's coming through. But I also think, with the holidays approaching, I'm a firm believer in shopping local because then your product isn't sitting on a cargo ship somewhere. It's right. You can go to your local store and buy it there. But as far as manufacturing, they are looking at different materials based on what they can find locally. And they're also looking at out of diversifying their current customer base to ensure that they get the products that they need. I'm hearing that some companies are increasing their inventory when they can purchase something to make sure that they have it when they need it. So that as long as, cash flow isn't an issue for the company, that is one of the ways that they're doing it. And until this kind of levels out a little bit, which I think it will shortly after 2022. But the national network is working on I don't want to use the word database, a matchmaking system to help keep more manufacturing domestic and what we can do locally.
One of the unfortunate side effects of the supply chain dysfunction, if you will, is inevitably prices are rising, which is leading to outsized inflation. And we heard earlier this week about inflation being at a 3-decade high. So it's interesting that you mentioned that 6 months, you don't see it even, softening anytime in the next 6 months. That's somewhat scary.
So I think it's more because of the time it takes everything to get off the cargo ships and leveling out. But again, that's just my opinion. It's, I just from what I'm reading, what I'm hearing, they're looking at different ways. But I think that it also, the positive side of it is they're looking more domestically rather than internationally now. So over the next 6 months, it's going to raise the domestic manufacturing production even more, which in 6 months is for 6 months is going to be a good thing.
Yeah, so I think we're calling it the great onshoring movement. So many interesting outgrowths of this. Kathie, we've talked about supply chain, we've talked about workforce. So now let's touch on the third element, which was new markets, new products. Is that the more difficult of the three that we've talked about?
I don't know. I don't actually think it is. I think because companies have more control over the new products and the new markets than they do over the supply chain and the workforce. So, if they have a product that they've been making for 10 or 15 years, they're starting to look at other ways that they can produce or use that product for materials or for example, steel is a in-demand material, and the cost is rising dramatically even before COVID because of the tariffs. Some companies are looking at composites or different materials that they could use rather than steel, so testing them. So I think that the sustainability piece of it is going to come out even stronger. But it allows the companies to look at the entire business model that they have, and they have to make an investment in R&D, which I think gives them a little bit more control over their future rather than the supply chain and the workforce piece of it.
Yeah. So, being in charge of your own destiny, if you will, creating a product that's proprietary in many respects and that's value added, and that, you can control the production of and ensure that you have in your line of sight an ability to convert that product into cash for the bottom line.
Correct. Yeah. I think and they started doing it in the pandemic. So I think another positive that came out of the pandemic, a silver lining, was, prior to that, manufacturers were so focused on what they did, how they did it. Change wasn't a quick thing for them to think about. But because of the pandemic, they had to. They had to change overnight, whether or not they were, made the conscious decision to start making masks or face shields or gowns. And they did it, and they realized that they could do it, which I think was fantastic, and so supportive of everyone, of the economy and the need within the United States to keep everyone safe. And I also think that they realized that, okay, if we can do that with this piece of it, how else can we do it with our other products? So I think innovation changed a lot, the mindset of the manufacturers, and the ones that are looking at the new products and the new markets are, I believe, a little bit more open than they may have been 3 or 5 years ago, because they've seen how quickly they can pivot and be flexible and, kind of remachine their whole process to make sure that they have a better product or a new product.
We've been working with Polaris MEP for a number of years, and also with the Rhode Island Manufacturers Association, to make Rhode Island more cost competitive for manufacturers in particular. Are you seeing any results of that, Kathie?
So being new to the position, I'd have to get back to you on that. I'm not 100% sure where we were 3 years ago. I can tell you that in the survey, we asked that being one of the questions, the business climate, and it wasn't a high priority for the manufacturers. So my assumption is going to be that there has been some shifts over the years, but I'm not sure exactly what they are.
Well, that's incredibly positive, and
yeah.
That makes my heart soar. That's because we've been dealing with that as an issue for multiple generations, and a lot of hard work has gone into repositioning the Rhode Island business climate with a lot of our local policymakers, and so that's really good news. So in the remaining minutes that we have, Kathie, let's just recap. Give us, and you were very clear about what's involved for a manufacturing company to get involved with Polaris Manufacturing Extension Partnership. But can you give us a sense, like a broad sense of, a range, if you will, like what it might cost to bring on the project implementers? So
if it's a one-day session, depending on the product, we typically do 4-hour blocks at an hourly rate depending on the project. So that obviously would have an impact. But our goal is to help you transform your company and doing that in steps. So like I had said earlier, we try not to be disruptive to your production. So we do 4-hour blocks, maybe once a week. And then that way there's an opportunity for you to learn, for the company to learn and then implement. And then we come back, we discuss, we provide another training session, and then the cycle will continue until the project is complete. But there's also a satisfaction survey that happens about 6 months to a year after the project is complete, because we're not successful unless our clients are successful. I think that's what makes us unique and different from a traditional consulting group. So we're a nonprofit. We do consulting, but we also do training, and we also help and partner with the company. Hence, the Manufacturing Extension Partnership is right in our name. We work directly with the company to make sure that they're successful.
You mentioned that there were grants available. So are we talking about hundreds of dollars, thousands of dollars? Like, what would a typical engagement cost out of pocket?
So it depends on the project and what they're gonna be doing. We have DLT dollars to support our training programs as long as they meet certain requirements. So they're not for all of the programs that we offer. And DLT requires a increase in wage for the staff, and they also look at the jobs created and the jobs retained with the training that's provided, because DLT wants to make sure that there's just as great an impact for the company as there is for the employees.
Sure. So we are running up to the top of the hour. I want to thank you, Kathie. I want to mention that the Greater Providence Chamber of Commerce has long been a partner with Polaris. Our own Janet Raymond, our Senior VP for Economic Development, has long served on the board of Polaris, and I know she is a very strong advocate for all the work that you're doing, particularly when there are issues pending before the General Assembly about ways to further fortify Polaris from a funding perspective, from a partnership perspective, and also making sure that we don't leave any dollars on the table when it comes to being able to draw down federal dollars. So we have been very proud to be partners with you and your predecessor, Christian Cowan, but so delighted to be able to meet you today and to learn all about the services that you're offering and how you've been able to, as an organization, innovate on your own, sort of mirroring the type of advice that you want to give to your clients as well. So tell our viewers how specifically they can get in touch with you, Kathie, and a sense of how they might begin the process.
Sure. So my email is at the bottom of the screen, info@polarismep.org, and also the office telephone number. But reach out, happy to help however we can. And we are thrilled to continue the partnership with the Chamber and continue working together to build manufacturing. And Laurie, I thank you very much for this time and this opportunity to talk more about Polaris and manufacturing in the state, which is such a growing industry.
Kathie Mahoney, thank you for your time and keep up the incredibly important work that you're doing. Thank you.
Thank you.